Okay, hi everybody. This is our third revision video in the biology playlist for your mock exam, and just a quick recap before we talk about photosynthesis about plant cells. And so you can see a typical drawing of a plant cell on the screen. Make sure that you are able to label all of those parts that are shown on the screen there and know their jobs. Particularly important in this video is going to be the role of the chloroplast in trapping the sunlight's energy in order to provide the energy for the process of photosynthesis. Obviously the reactants for photosynthesis have got to get into the cell and diffuse through the cell membrane, and we'll be talking about that later on. Okay, so here we've got a diagram that's summing up the process of photosynthesis. You can see that carbon dioxide and water have to enter the leaf. Light energy and chlorophyll are required in order for the process of photosynthesis to happen, and the products of photosynthesis are glucose and oxygen. Now, glucose is a sugar, and we can also say that it is a carbohydrate. It's made of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, and those atoms have been provided from the CO2 and H2O. Oxygen is a waste product which goes off into the atmosphere when there's plenty of light energy available. You absolutely must memorize the equation for photosynthesis. In words, the reactants, carbon dioxide, reacts with water and makes the products glucose and oxygen. Higher tier students, make sure you've got that balanced symbol equation. Notice that there's 6 of everything apart from the glucose, and the glucose molecule is made up of the same number of carbon and oxygen atoms and double that number of hydrogen. This is typical for a sugar. We don't include light or chlorophyll in the equation. They are required, but they are not substances, so not participating in the reaction. Photosynthesis is affected by 3 factors that you need to know about: light intensity, carbon dioxide concentration and temperature. And you can see on these graphs the shape of the graph for the effect of those factors on photosynthesis. Notice that both light and CO2 level out, whereas the temperature graph falls after an optimum temperature, and that is to do with the enzymes being denatured at higher temperatures, and so temperature has a special shaped graph. Finally, on this graph you've got a summary of temperature, light and carbon dioxide concentration. In the exam you would need to decide which experiments you would compare to tell you about the effect of each factor. So you can see in experiment 1 and experiment 3 that the temperature is constant at 25 degrees C, so therefore as a control variable, and the CO2 concentration is higher in experiment 3 than it is in experiment 1. These lines are showing us the effect of increasing CO2. Experiment 1 and 2 apply the same logic. CO2 is controlled, the temperature is different. Experiment 1 shows the effect of an increased temperature on photosynthesis. All 3 lines are an upward slope which eventually levels out to become flat. On each line, when the line becomes horizontal, that tells us that something other than the light intensity is limiting photosynthesis. So in all of the lines, if they're sloping upwards, that tells us that the thing on the bottom axis, in this case light intensity, is the limiting factor. And all of the lines level out. At the point that they level out, something else is limiting photosynthesis other than light intensity. So for example, in experiment 3, at the point where it's become horizontal, we could increase the rate of photosynthesis further only by increasing the temperature or increasing the CO2 percentage.